Welcome, everyone. I'm thrilled that we're studying and practicing together. And this is the second talk on the Heart Sutra, one of the most pith expressions of the extraordinary realization in Buddhism that moves us into fearless compassion. So last week, in the first talk, we were relating where studying the Heart Sutra falls in our history of studying together all of these years, and where and why we're studying the Heart Sutra together in the context of these very challenging times, and that the purpose of working with the Heart Sutra is to understand a shift in perspective, and that this shift in perspective is not going from one thing to another thing, but it's a flexibility of mind that progresses in multiple perspectives until we understand what Thich Nhat Hanh expresses as interbeing. And this concept of interbeing is a word in English that we're still struggling to translate, of a different framework. Our normal framework is duality. I'm over here, you're over there. I either like you or I don't like you. There's a responsiveness, but that responsiveness both is our introduction to loving kindness, extending loving kindness at first in an empathetic way to those that are close to us, that we might say is a part of our heart, a natural part of our heart, to, on the spectrum, I'm over here and you're over there, you cause me problems, you're a difficult person in my life. When we break through those categories, there's no special loved person and no enemy. There is a radiating compassion without bias. So we are asking ourselves to meet these times not with partiality, but with this fearless, unbiased compassion. So today I'm going to set the stage a little bit more. We are reading Thich Nhat Hanh's translation from the Vietnamese and reading his commentary, The Heart of Compassion, but we are in the Tibetan tradition, so we're also including the book Ceaseless Echoes of Great Silence by Khenpo Palden Sherab, which is a commentary on the Tibetan translation. And we're including the great Japanese translator, Kaz Tanahashi, and his translation. And as I was reflecting this morning, it was a full circle moment for me, because I realized the very first time I heard this Heart Sutra, the very first time I chanted it, it was in Japanese. I was visiting a Sangha, and the person who was leading that meditation said, this is extraordinary karma. And even if you don't understand the words, you now have the seed of this very important pith instruction, the Heart Sutra. So meeting this moment with these three translations, which I sent you in the registration, actually brings together for me three great eras of my life. And when I was then trying to understand the Heart Sutra, because it was in Japanese, I went to Thich Nhat Hanh's book, the very same book that we are using as our main commentary. And that gave me an introduction to how to understand this. But as we're starting today, like that lovely woman who impressed upon me the significance and importance of the Heart Sutra, I want to begin with a story of how the Heart Sutra actually came to Tibet. So it was in the era of King Trizon Dützen, who's the second great Dharma king, and he sent an extraordinary realized scholar, Langkampa Gocha. And Langkampa Gocha had a photographic memory, so he sent him to India. And we can say that so simply, he sent him to India. It meant he walked from Lhasa to India, like walking from here in Maine to California, or even worse, no roads, no directions, no maps. So Langkampa Gocha received the 100,000 lines Prajna Paramita Sutra in 12 volumes, memorized it, and then he thought, well, how can I express the significance of what I'm bringing back to the court in a way that people will treasure this teaching? It was written in Sanskrit, not in Tibetan, and so like me, they wouldn't have an immediate understanding of any of the works. So when Langkampa Gocha came to court, he dressed up as the Heart Sutra. He had a gold board on one side of his body and a turquoise board on the other side of his body, and then a pearl belt binding the boards together. And that's the way Tibetan texts were presented. They were woodblock prints with boards holding all the pages together. And the sutra itself was written with ink made from a little bit of the king's blood mixed with precious gems. And so this fabulous entrance to the court in this performance was a display of the treasure that he was bringing back. And then it had to be translated, and the translation of the Prajna Paramita took 3 generations. And King Trizon Dützen arranged a temple full of scholars and realized masters when questions came up, translators that were considered great and translators that were considered secondary, but not just, 1 or 2. There were 500 great scholars, 108 realized masters, 108 great translators, and 1,008 secondary translators. And these people together spent 3 generations, which is to say, this is one reason we're looking at 3 different translations, so that we're not in English at the point of 3 generations trying to translate the Prajna Paramita. And we're looking at 3 master translators in their lineages, master translators. But imagine a room with hundreds of master translators working together. So I'm thrilled that we're able to embark upon this in this particular way. And one of the head translators in the Tibetan tradition was Vimlamitra. And when you come to visit Liberation House, we have a relic of Vimlamitra in our White Tara statue. So bringing all of that history from, it came to Tibet in the 600s to today here in Portland or Falmouth, Maine. So what I want to emphasize is flexibility of mind. When we are studying Buddhism, we're not studying just one point of view. We're studying progressive perspectives. And we can think about it as we were the first day, from down on the ground to high in the mountains, that are two different perspectives. But the example I'd like to offer today is the perspective between a child and a parent. So imagine you're with your child or grandchild, and the child is in a nightmare, and they wake up and they're crying and they're saying, this happened and they hurt me and they did this. And the parent can first of all see when the child is in a nightmare, that their sleeping is disturbed, and then they can see when the child first awake from the nightmare that their perspective is confused. And it's not that the child did not have an experience. They did have an experience, but the experience is confused in the dream state and waking state. And the parent has the skill and wisdom to wake the child from the nightmare, soothe the child, and over time, help the child go from the confused experience to the wise experience. So we're in this example, the confused child, and the Heart Sutra is considered so important because it's the pith expression of the Prajnaparamita, 100,000 lines, 12 volumes, in just a few paragraphs. But by studying and practicing the Heart Sutra, we have the path and capacity to go from the confusion of the child to the wisdom of the parent. And with the wisdom of the parent, we can help any confused being, right? We can't just help the one toddler. Once you have the wisdom, you are able to help eventually all sentient beings. So we are studying this so we can liberate ourselves and all sentient beings from confusion and ignorance to wisdom. So I want to read this poem by Nagarjuna, which emphasizes why Buddhism is presented this way and what we mean by progressive stages of understanding. Just as a grammarian initially teaches the alphabet, the Buddha teaches the Dharma just as those to be guided can absorb it. What can you hear at first? To some, he teaches the Dharma in order to turn them away from evil. To some, so they accomplish merit. To some, the Dharma based on duality. To some, the Dharma based on non-duality. To some, the Dharma that is profound and frightening to the fearful. And to some, the means for enlightenment, that is, emptiness with a heart of compassion. And this poem is by Nagarjuna. And Nagarjuna is the historic figure that propagated the Heart Sutra historically for the first time in around 200 CE. It then came to Tibet in around the 750s, and that's about when it came to Japan as well. So our flexibility and our change of perspective is going from a reified conceptuality or duality into beyond conception. Right now, anything that we think or say is created by our own concepts and ideas, so it's conceptual. And we are moving progressively beyond that framework. Ultimate reality is beyond duality, one, not two. This is a quote from Pagmo Drupa in the Drikung lineage. If you're able to maintain your mind in non-duality, that is the great Mahamudra. So that is the absolute aspect of meditation, seeing the nature of reality, seeing the nature of our mind, just like the wise parent can see the confusion of the child in a nightmare. The great masters can see our confusion and assist us in reaching this larger perspective. So, as I've said, every time that we've started a new text, in our tradition, we always start with the view. The view is this non-conceptuality, this non-duality, this bigger perspective. And we're going to look at that this morning through the titles. And I'm going to put the titles in the chat box, the titles of the translations. And the titles and the different translations of the titles help us get a picture of what it means when we say non-duality, what it means when we say the greatest wisdom. So King Tritsan Dutsan in the first era of translation didn't want to even touch the title. So he said, okay, let's just keep it in Sanskrit. Maha Prajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra. Bhagavati Prajna Paramita Hridaya. And then Thich Nhat Hanh, the insight that brings us to the other shore. The other shore from conceptuality isn't non-conceptuality, really, because that's still dualistic. It is simply, let's just say, the other shore. I'm not sure we have a translation in English yet for that. And then Kaz Tanahashi, the Sutra on the Heart of Realizing Wisdom Beyond Wisdom. And now the third one is the Blessed Mother, the Heart of the Perfection of Wisdom, would be a translation from the Tibetan. And because I've studied the Tibetan commentaries more closely, we're going to look at, well, how did they start translating this into Tibetan, and what are the Tibetan words? Cham Den Dema Sherab. Let's just keep it simple with that. But here are our great translators looking at the original and trying to express in English, and just the titles give us an indication of their exploration. First of all, a lovely thing to note is that this realization is in the vocabulary considered feminine. It's feminine because this realization is the mother of all the Buddhas. So we're having a sense of the potential of the feminine aspect. So the first word, cham, is, let's go back, sorry, Bhagavati, Prajna Paramita Hridaya, this original Sanskrit. Bhagavati is translated into 3 syllables, cham den de, cham den dema. So cham is the radication of what we call the 4 maras: attachment and aversion, impermanence, the desire for material things, and the 5 aggregates. That's oversimplified, but these are the elements of our mind that keep us in confusion. So destroying, eradicating the 4 maras. And Dem is possessing all the qualities of the Buddha. The capacity of physical health and strength, wealth, power, fame, perseverance, everything that is needed to exemplify and offer the Dharma. All the qualities that are needed to offer the Dharma. And then Dema is gone beyond, transcend, and Ma, the realizer, the feminine aspect. So we're destroying confusion, we're acquiring all the qualities of the Buddha to alleviate the suffering of beings, and the gone beyond realizer. This is all the word Bhagavati. Then we have to keep going back. Bhagavati, then Prajna Paramita. And remember, Prajna Paramita is great wisdom, and Hridaya is heart. So we're not talking about the 100,000 lines and 12 volumes. We're talking about the Prajna Paramita, heart essence. So Prajna is the supreme wisdom. It is the inquisitive curiosity of our mind and the brilliant perfection of insight. A complete change of outlook. So the wisdom that we experience in our conceptual understanding is bright and inquisitive, and curious and aware. But when it goes beyond to supreme wisdom, there is a direct encounter with ultimate reality, a complete change of outlook. The paramita, so there's prajna, and then the paramita is gone beyond. Gone beyond the ocean of samsara. So we're talking about the wisdom that lacks duality, no apprehender or apprehended. And we're talking about a progressive process that becomes increasingly refined as we subtly shed conceptuality until we directly realize the nature of phenomena without any mental reference points. A panoramic awareness of the nature of phenomena. So, in terms of the metaphor we were using last week, I was talking about the Buddha teaching on the plains, and then when he taught this particular series of teachings, he moved to the mountaintop, so there was a change of perspective physically, but the mental change of perspective is going beyond into this great pure essence without any mental reference points, because the mental reference points create bias, starts to create views, starts to create discrimination. I like you better than you. I like this philosophy better than this philosophy. This is a wisdom beyond reference points. the final word, Hridaya, pith or essence, that all of the 12 volumes of the 100,000 lines can be summarized in this sutra. So this then presents the view of what we'll be studying together. And let's read those titles again. Bhagavati, Prajna, Paramita Hridaya, getting rid of confusion, acquiring all wisdom and the capability and skills to transmit that wisdom, to be the wise parent that wakes up the children in the nightmares, going to the other shore, that this wisdom is not on our conceptual shore, and Hridaya, this is the heart of these teachings. So now the titles make a little more sense, and particularly in the Tibetan, it emphasizes the feminine aspect as well, which is lovely. The great potential of, going back to the great potential of the womb being the spaciousness that allows the creation of the child. And these studies are the mother that allows the realization to arise in all of our minds. I'd just like to read a closing sentence from the wonderful German scholar Karl Bernholzer, bringing it back to why are we studying this now. Prajna, or wisdom of emptiness, entails both an illuminating quality and a sense of courage to face whatever is going on in our minds and whatever is happening in any situation. So, not to worry, we are going very, very slowly, so that we can unlock the wisdom of the Heart Sutra in ways that make sense to you in your lives and in these challenging times. But I wanted to begin with the story of how the Heart Sutra came to Tibet, because it presents the importance, significance, and how the Langkampa Gocha, how he tried to communicate to people who knew nothing about this, that this is changing your lives and has the capacity to break open your heart mind into a much bigger heart mind. And this is really what is called for in this moment that we're living in. And we have these teachings through the kindness of our lineages. So you have 3 translations that you received with registration, and we're working with The Heart of Understanding by Thich Nhat Hanh, which is very accessible, and The Ceaseless Echoes of Great Silence by Khenpo Palden Sherab, which is a Tibetan commentary. Also, I think very accessible. For decades, it was one of the 2 most valuable books on my bookshelf, and one that I turned to when things were difficult. And then we have the words of Kaz Tanahashi that I think for those who need a more poetic doorway, have another entree. So we'll keep it slow and fairly simple, my hope, in the Dharma talks, so that whichever doorway you're coming from, however way you understand things and learn things, you have access to opening the Heart Sutra as something that will function for you in your exploration of Dharma and the larger exploration of your life. So let's just sit with these titles, contemplating these titles, for about 5 minutes, and then we'll have a few minutes for questions. Just let the words of the titles resonate in your mind. Imagine that you're in the court in the great palace of Tibet, and this revered, great, realized scholar has been away for years and years, walking to India, receiving the teachings, memorizing the volumes, walking back to India, back to Tibet from India, surviving storms, robbers, wild animals, And he walks into the court dressed as the Heart Sutra, gold board, turquoise board, bound with a rope of pearls. Imagine the surprise and delight and feeling of receiving one of the greatest treasures in the world on that day. Okay, let's return.